In terms of the fourth quarter, they had all but one of their buckets was inside the paint. Was that them just being able to get into the paint and get whatever they want because of that point of attack defense like you were talking about?
Yeah, they had that and 9 free throws.
The Indiana Fever were on fire. They dominated Paige Buchers and the Dallas Wings. They crushed the Minnesota Lynx to claim their first Commissioner's Cup. Then they dismantled A.J. Wilson and the Las Vegas Aces point 3 straight wins. The momentum was real. Even without Caitlin Clark, fans expected them to breeze past the struggling Los Angeles Sparks, one of the lowest-ranked teams in the league. But what happened next left fans stunned. The officiating was so questionable, so clearly one-sided, that head coach Stephanie White was left speechless, uttering just 5 words that exposed everything wrong with WNBA refereeing. Fans are outraged, and they are demanding accountability.
We should have won this game. There was inconsistencies in the officiating. Wait until you see the second half. And I have everything.
The Fever stepped onto the court without their biggest star. And what followed stunned everyone. Caitlin Clark was once again sidelined, this time with a lingering left groin injury. Marking her 5th consecutive game out, her absence completely disrupted Indiana's rhythm. Without her elite playmaking, court vision, and scoring presence, the Fever looked like a shadow of themselves, struggling to generate offense and lacking the energy that Clark usually brings to the floor.
Finding out this morning that we probably need to hold out again today. It really is a day-to-day thing. And I think for us, making sure that we're prioritizing her long-term health and wellness. It's anybody who's had some of these types of injuries understand that sometimes it's a process. She's a quick healer and she's been doing everything that she can to get back on the floor. So, we just want to make sure that we're hypersensitive to the big picture.
But that wasn't the only challenge. Damiris Dantas was away representing her country in the FIBA AmeriCup, forcing the Fever to adjust their rotations on the fly. Her absence meant losing a key contributor, one who brings size, toughness, and veteran experience off the bench. Then came the bombshell. DeWanna Bonner had officially quit the team. 3 major pieces, gone in one devastating stretch, and yet the Fever was still expected to win. The ESPN's matchup predictor gave Indiana a 72.9% chance of victory. Betting lines from MGM had them favored by 6.5 points. On paper, this game should have been a breeze. The logic was simple. The Spark had been one of the WNBA's weakest teams all season. Meanwhile, Indiana was riding high after an impressive 3-game win streak. Aaliyah Boston was dominating in the paint. Kelsey Mitchell had stepped up as a vocal leader, so the team's chemistry looked rock solid after a string of strong performances. No Caitlin Clark, no Dantas, no Bonner, but somehow expectations were still sky high.
Howard looking backdoor for Mitchell, not there. Shot clock down to 7. McDonald feed inside, and it's Howard for 2. It's good record.
But something felt off even before tip-off. Without Caitlin Clark at the helm, the Fever's pace had noticeably slowed. Ball movement lacked urgency. Aaliyah Boston wasn't getting the touches she needed to dominate the paint. The offensive rhythm, once fluid and dynamic with Clark orchestrating, began to unravel. Suddenly, Indiana's system looked disjointed. Yes, the Fever still had all-star level talent. Yes, the Sparks were a team just trying to stay afloat this season. So how? With every advantage. On paper, did Indiana end up losing this game? That's where things take a surprising turn.
I don't get it. Breanna Stewart, Aja Wilson, wait until you see what they did for Kelsey Plum tonight. They get all the calls. Touch fouls, anything. And guess what happens? Aaliyah Boston, the best center in the game, and guess what happens to her? She gets called for every touch foul and ends up in foul trouble this entire season and is still putting up MVP type numbers. What happens with Caitlin Clark? Have you ever seen her get a touch foul, a phantom call? No. The physicality, that's the WNBA when it comes to Caitlin Clark. But anybody else, the physicality disappears, and it's foul after foul.
Analysts, fans, and even Vegas betting lines believed Indiana's raw talent.
I watched our Kentucky game, and that was the game before UConn, and I just looked so
even with key absences, they still had championship-level players on the floor. The Sparks, on paper, they were supposed to be easy prey. But this was a perfect storm for disaster. The chemistry that had fueled Indiana's recent win streak was deeply tied to Caitlin Clark's leadership. With her gone, the structure collapsed. Role players who had thrived in their defined roles were suddenly forced to step up and do more, often out of position. And under pressure as the opening whistle blew, the cracks began to show, and the weight of missing stars began to drag the Fever down, play by play, quarter by quarter.
What does it take to get a team to be more consistent, especially from you on the coaching side of things?
Yeah, I mean, I think a couple things. There's always got to be a high attention to knowing personnel. Oftentimes you don't get a lot of practice time, and so going over a lot of their sets, what you do. But at the end of the day, making sure we know our personnel, who we're going to run off the three-point line, what we're willing to give up. We've got to make sure that there's a high attention to detail there.
Even as the Fever began to unravel, 3 players refused to let them go down without a fight. Aaliyah Boston took center stage and dominated the paint from start to finish. She dropped 23 points and grabbed 12 rebounds, delivering the kind of performance that usually ends in a win. Boston shot an efficient 9-4-17 from the field and hit 5 of 7 free throws, proving once again that when she gets the ball in the right moments, she's nearly unstoppable. For the first time in days, Indiana found their rhythm through her. Boston didn't just show up. She reminded everyone why she's one of the most gifted front-court players in the WNBA.
Here's Mitchell off the screen, but can't connect on the three. Boston offensive rebound, rolls it in and a foul. The two bigs bring the ball up the floor, and Hamby wasn't ready for that.
How about that change of pace and burst like a guard? Gets downhill to the rim.
Kelsey Mitchell rose to the moment in Caitlin Clark's absence. With a Fever desperate for offense, Mitchell delivered, dropping 19 crucial points and drilling 3 clutch three-pointers when the team needed a spark. But this night wasn't just about numbers. Mitchell quietly reached a historic milestone, playing in her 251st game for Indiana, second only to the legendary Tamika Catchings in franchise appearances. Her experience and poise were on full display, keeping the Fever afloat when the game could have slipped away. She didn't just play hard. She led, proving once again why she's a heartbeat of this team when adversity strikes. Injured to Viate.
Lob inside. Boston too far underneath. Shot clock down to 5. Kick out Mitchell. Oh, yes!
And she wasn't alone. Natasha Howard showed exactly why veteran leadership matters. She delivered a near double-double with 21 points and 9 rebounds. Anchoring both ends of the floor when it mattered most, Howard was incredibly efficient, hitting 8 of 11 shots from the field, including a key three-pointer, and converting 4 of 6 free throws. Her scoring touch and physical presence gave the Fever a much-needed boost inside and out that INA game where every possession counted. Howard proved to be a steadying force, bringing intensity, experience, and firepower to a lineup desperately in need of all 3.
Busted them all up. We went to the same high school.
Howard left alone. Answers with a 3.
These 3 players put the entire team on their shoulders. They weren't just playing hard. They were putting up championship-caliber performances against an opponent that was expected to crumble under pressure. Aaliyah Boston dominated the paint like the all-star she is, establishing her presence early and often. Kelsey Mitchell hit clutch shots that kept Indiana within striking distance. And Natasha Howard leaned on her veteran instincts to make the kind of plays that younger players simply don't. The smart rotations, the timely rebounds, the composure under fire. Imagine the scene: Boston owning the inside game, Mitchell draining shots from every angle, Howard making savvy decisions that reignited hope. You could feel the energy shift. The comeback felt inevitable. The crowd sensed it. Momentum was building, and it was all swinging toward the Fever.
LA is so dangerous. They don't look like a 5-win team to me.
Oh, and there's Tipson sending it back.
But here's where everything started to unravel, and not because of the Fever. Despite standout performances from Boston, Mitchell, and Howard, the game's momentum were hijacked by something entirely out of their control. The officiating call after questionable call went against Indiana. The most shocking moment: Sophie Cunningham was visibly grabbed by the neck during a scramble, but instead of calling a foul, the officials ruled it a jump ball. The crowd erupted. The bench was stunned. Even the broadcasters couldn't hide their disbelief that IT wasn't just one bad call, it was a pattern. And it was clear, this game was no longer being decided solely by the players on the court.
And then Aaliyah Boston, like I said, she didn't touch her. They put her in foul trouble all season long. They're just calling stuff to call stuff. The refs made this game about them. Aaliyah Boston, again, she's an all-star player. Look at these hits. Good thing Caitlin Clark didn't play because it was just a sloppy basketball game between the officials and the Los Angeles Sparks. Look at this. They called this a foul instead of a block. And then there's Aaliyah Boston again. That's 3 fouls where she didn't touch anybody. And that's our best player, and wonder why we lose this game. Michaela Timpson, watch these 2 calls in a row. She didn't do anything. She got hit on that one, and they called a foul on her.
The controversial calls kept piling up in the final minutes, right when the game hung in the balance. You could feel the frustration boiling over on the court. The players were leaving everything out there. Boston was performing at an elite level. Mitchell was hitting clutch shots that should have sealed the win. Howard was making veteran plays that screamed championship pedigree. But time and time again, the officials made calls that stripped the Fever of momentum and robbed them of a fair shot at closing it out.
And this is fourth quarter. Look at this. This one pissed me off. Kelsey Plum seriously elbows Lexi Hall, then purposely steps over so she couldn't get up. Lexi Hall can't believe it. That's a foul. The ref was right there in front of her. And then here we go. And they kept McDonald in foul trouble the entire game. There's 2 in a row where she didn't do anything. Look at that. Just had her arms in the air, but they gave, this is the fourth quarter, and they just kept giving every single call. I like Leah Boston finally getting pissed off. Then they call this away from the ball in the fourth quarter. Nothing going on. Just to put him at the line, and then Kelsey Plum, another one. But when Howard drives and gets slashed across the face, no foul, just out of bounds.
Even their heroic efforts weren't enough to overcome the string of controversial calls that ultimately decided the outcome. The heartbreak was written all over their faces as they watched a winnable game slip away, lost not through effort or execution, but because of factors completely outside their control.
In terms of the fourth quarter, they had all but one of their buckets was inside the paint. Was that them just being able to get into the paint and get whatever they want because of that point of attack defense like you were talking about?
Yeah, they had that and 9 free throws.
After watching her team battle through adversity only to fall in heartbreaking fashion, Stephanie White finally stepped to the MIC. The post-game press conference was tense. The frustration was clear on her face. She had just witnessed her players pour everything onto the floor, Boston dominating the paint, Mitchell draining clutch shots, Howard showing a veteran poise. But it still wasn't enough. Reporters waited quietly, knowing White usually stays composed, measured. But this one stung. Losing to one of the league's worst teams wasn't just disappointing. It was unacceptable.
I mean, look, there are going to be days where you make shots and miss shots. I mean, that's part of it. I thought, AB had a really good look at the end. And so sometimes it just doesn't fall your way. So we're looking more about execution. I didn't feel like our execution was all that good at the end. I felt like in our reset timeout, it wasn't very good either. And, that's on us, continuing to make sure that we are going over that, as often as possible when we have our practice time and making sure that we're sharp in those areas.
Here's where things took a sharp turn. Stephanie White summed it up in just 5 powerful words. We didn't get the calls. That was all she needed to say. 5 words that captured the frustration of an entire locker room. Her expression said the rest. She knew her team had been robbed of a win they owned. Now let's talk about the moments that flipped the game. Sophie Cunningham was clearly grabbed by the neck, yet the refs called a jump ball instead of a foul. That's not just a bad call, that's blatant favoritism. Aaliyah Boston, meanwhile, was whistled for soft contact while the Sparks were allowed to play rough with no consequences. The double standard wasn't just obvious, it was infuriating.
Here is Boston on a handoff to Cunningham. Head full of steam to the rim, and a foul. Cunningham and 1.
I mean, this is just a really good screen by Boston to give her a step. The switch Sophie's having a good time.
White's 5 words captured the frustration of every Indiana Fever fan watching that game. She gave a voice to the anger and disbelief that filled living rooms across the country. Everyone saw it. The missed calls, the blatant inconsistencies, the momentum stolen by questionable officiating. And in that moment, she spoke for all of them. But this wasn't just about one game. This is a team already facing major adversity. Their star players sidelined, the roster constantly shifting, chemistry tested at every turn. Now, even the officiating feels stacked against them. And yet, despite all of it, the Fever nearly pulled it off. Aaliyah Boston played like an all-star. Kelsey Mitchell stepped up with the leadership they needed. Natasha Howard delivered with the poise of a champion. The talent is there. The potential is real. This loss, as heartbreaking as it was, became something more, proof that this team is built for bigger things. When Caitlin Clark returns and the lineup stabilizes, games like this will become fuel. Stephanie White's 5 words weren't just frustration. They were a warning. This team isn't backing down. They are building something resilient, something dangerous, something special.